I'm Astrid, and not long ago, my father lost his battle with illness and passed away. I often find myself thinking about how much I wish he could have seen his grandchildren. I let out a sigh as I whispered these thoughts aloud. I got married when I was 24, which was exactly 5 years ago. At my wedding, my father and I made a promise. I would let him know the moment I found out I was pregnant. Sadly, that promise was never fulfilled. If there's one thing I regret, it's not being able to share that joy with him. Since my father's illness was diagnosed a year ago, I tried to be there for him as much as I could. I frequently visited my parents' home and went with my mother to the hospital. I also made sure to increase the number of phone calls and video chats we had. I did everything within my power to support him, yet I can't help but wonder if I could have done more. Could I have done more? I murmured, but my mother, sitting beside me, reassured me. You did everything you could, Astrid. Really? I asked, seeking further assurance. She nodded. Yes, your father would have been content with everything you did. Just then, my sister Elsa returned and brought the lawyer with her. Elsa walked into the living room with a man in his mid-40s trailing behind her. I assumed he was the lawyer. He handed me his business card and introduced himself. I'm Lars, the attorney. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat, I said, gesturing for him to sit. My mother guided the lawyer to a seat, and as soon as he settled, my sister blurted out, I heard from the lawyer that Dad left quite an inheritance. Don't think it's all yours, Elsa, I shot back. Clearly annoyed, my sister glared at me, and I glared right back. Elsa and I never really got along. Things were fine between us until we learned about Dad's illness. After that, her arrogant attitude caused a rift between us. Despite my efforts to reach out to her, she never once visited our father. I may have been a bit harsh when I confronted her about it, but her reaction was just as problematic. You're not a child. You don't have to be so stubborn, I told her. She snapped back. I'm not being stubborn. I live in the city, and it's not easy to come to the countryside. But it only takes 2 hours by car, I argued. Those 2 hours are a hassle, and it costs money, she retorted. So, money is what's important to you? I asked. Of course it is. I'm busy, so stop contacting me, she said, ending the conversation. Even though she lived far away, I always thought she could make the effort to visit once in a while. But she never did, and that's why our relationship soured so quickly. In the end, Elsa never visited our father, and the tension between us only grew. Sensing the strain in the room, the lawyer stepped in. Let's all calm down, please. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologized, and the lawyer nodded before continuing. As I mentioned over the phone, I have your father's will. When did this happen? My mother asked quietly. A few weeks before he passed away, the lawyer replied. He contacted me and asked me to come to the hospital. I had him write the will in front of me, with his primary physician present. It turned out that my father had arranged for the primary physician to contact the lawyer once he had passed. After my father's death, the physician contacted the lawyer, who then reached out to us. That's how we all ended up here today. The lawyer pulled out a white envelope and placed it in front of us, saying, This is the will. That's definitely Dad's handwriting, I murmured, recognizing the familiar script on the envelope. Elsa, however, seemed impatient. Never mind that. Just tell us what it says. I'm busy, you know, she said. The lawyer offered a small smile before opening the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. He read aloud what was written. Along with the house and land, my father's inheritance included some savings and a storage shed. We all knew about the house and land, but the mention of a storage shed caught us off guard. As I was trying to process this, Elsa, now clearly frustrated, interrupted. Wait a minute, what about the farm? The farm? The lawyer asked, looking puzzled. Yes, the farm that Dad worked on as a hobby, she clarified. My father had once run a company in a nearby town, but after turning 49, he began to feel the strain. I'm thinking of closing the company. I want to take it easy. Is that okay? I remember him saying this when I was in high school. My sister, who was in college at the time, opposed the idea. But my mother and I, concerned about his health, supported him. Don't worry about money, Elsa. We have enough savings. my father reassured her. Reluctantly, she agreed. After that, my father did close his company and started farming near our home. It feels good to move my body while farming, he would say with a smile. Seeing him happy made me glad that I had supported his decision, but Elsa didn't seem to share my sentiment. She had planned to return home after college, but instead got a job near her university. Eventually, she married the CEO of an IT company she met through work. Regardless, my father continued farming until he fell ill. Now, Elsa was insisting that the farm should be part of the inheritance. The lawyer reviewed the documents after hearing her demand. The farm is rented land, he stated. Rented? Elsa repeated, her disappointment evident. I thought we owned a large piece of land. The land where my father grew vegetables was indeed spacious, but I had always thought it might be too much for us, given that we knew nothing about farming. Perhaps it was a good thing that the land was rented, I thought to myself. The conversation then shifted to how the inheritance would be divided. As for the division of the inheritance, the house and land will go to the wife, the lawyer announced, while my sister grimaced in response. So, we can divide the rest however we want, Elsa asked with a calculating look. Yes, the lawyer replied. Please divide the savings and the storage shed between you two. Savings means cash, right? I'll take the cash. How much is it? Elsa inquired eagerly. The savings amount to about $100,000, the lawyer informed us. There's no need to pay inheritance tax for this amount. I'll take the $100,000 in cash, Elsa declared with a triumphant smile, but I couldn't let her get away with such a selfish decision. Hold on a minute, I object. I protested, my voice firm.
Why?
I'm the oldest daughter, she shot back, as if that justified her claim. That's irrelevant, I countered. You can have the storage shed. What even is that anyway? Elsa scoffed, turning back to the lawyer, who was flipping through the documents. It's the storage shed next to the field, the lawyer explained. You'll inherit the building, the land it's on, and its contents. Land. Elsa's eyes lit up with interest. Even though she was married to the CEO of an IT company, it seemed she still had an appetite for more wealth. As I watched her, the lawyer added, the land comes with it, but it's only about 65 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom. A small bedroom? Elsa repeated, her excitement fading. The lawyer then placed some photos of the shed on the table. The images showed a rundown shack from the outside and a modest interior filled with basic tools like hoses, scissors, and shovels. Nothing of apparent value. I don't want it, Elsa grimaced, shoving the photos aside. I looked at them too, but the shed seemed completely ordinary. These were sentimental items, but they wouldn't bring in any money.
Fine, I'll take the cash.
You can have that dirty shed, she said dismissively. Hold on. That's not fair, I argued. You agreed to the vegetable farming. What are you complaining about now? It was hard to argue when she put it that way, but I couldn't just let her take all of Dad's inheritance without saying anything. So we're good then? Elsa pressed, eager to finalize the deal. As I hesitated, my mother chimed in. As long as Elsa won't complain later, I have no objections. There's no way I would, Elsa said confidently. Then Elsa gets the cash, and Astrid gets the shed. Okay, it's settled then, the lawyer confirmed. Elsa grinned, clearly satisfied with how things had turned out. But I felt uneasy. Well, I'm not satisfied, I said, refusing to let it go. Oh, give it up. You're so greedy, aren't you? Elsa sneered. That's not it, I insisted. You're such a hassle. You care more about Dad than money, right? Elsa's words stung, leaving me momentarily speechless. Of course, family was more important than money. Money mattered, but it wasn't something to be compared with the bond one had with my father. While I was lost in thought, Elsa quickly ended the conversation. In the end, my mother got the house and land, Elsa took Dad's savings, and all that was left for me was that dirty old shed. After everything was settled, my sister signed a document promising not to complain about the division of the inheritance. She laughed loudly as she signed, her laughter echoing in my ears. Meanwhile, I was filled with resentment and couldn't help but vent to my mother later. Mom, why didn't you help me? I did help you, She replied calmly.
How?
You sided with Elsa. I accused, feeling betrayed. That's not true. I made sure you got the shed, she said with a knowing smile.
Huh?
I'm not happy about getting that shed. I pouted, still upset. You might find something surprisingly good if you look closely, my mother said, her smile widening. I could only puff out my cheeks in frustration. The next day, I took the key from the lawyer and headed to the shed near the field. It was a 10-minute walk from home, along a rural road where no one else passed by. Eventually, I reached the field my father had rented. Over the past year, since he'd been hospitalized, the field had been left unattended. I approached the shed and unlocked it with the key. Wow, it's dusty, I muttered, noticing the thick layer of dust that coated everything.
It was clear no one had cleaned it in a long time.
Still, I thought there might be something sentimental from Dad hidden inside. I looked around the shed, but nothing special caught my eye. It was just a dirty old shed, after all. The tools left behind were those he had used for farming. They were sentimental, but not particularly valuable. Maybe I should just take what's inside for now, I mumbled, glancing around the shed again. That's when I noticed something odd. Huh, I muttered, feeling puzzled. The inside of the shed seemed smaller than it should have been. Maybe it was the dim light, but the space felt cramped. Is it just my imagination? I wondered. I stepped outside to double-check, but something still felt off. After a moment of thought, I decided to walk around to the back of the shed. To my surprise, I found another door there. Wait, another entrance at the back? I gasped. From the inside, there had only been one door and a solid wall where this door should have been. But here, from the outside, was a door that didn't make sense. What's going on? I thought to myself. A door on the back should be visible from the inside too, but it wasn't. That meant there had to be a wall in between, creating a hidden space accessible only from the back. The moment I realized this, I felt a rush of excitement. This must be Dad's surprise. Dad always loved surprises. He would even surprise me on my birthdays. As memories flooded back, I felt tears welling up. I quickly went back inside the shed to search for the key to this mysterious door. If it was hidden, Dad would have stashed it somewhere in the shed. With that gut feeling, I started rummaging through the place. After a while, I found 2 keys hidden in the handle of a shovel. I hurried to the back of the shed and tried one of the keys in the lock. With a satisfying click, the door swung open. What could be in here? I wondered. The space inside was indeed cramped, only about 3 feet wide. But there, standing alone, was a large safe. Is this from Dad's company? I whispered, recognizing the safe. It was the same one I used to see in the corner of his office when I was a child. Nostalgic and emotional, I hugged the safe tightly. This was a true memory of my father, and having it made the inheritance feel worthwhile. But knowing Dad, I was sure this wasn't the end. There had to be more surprises waiting to be discovered, I muttered to myself as I inserted the second key into the safe. With a slightly rusty creak, the door swung open.
What?
No way, I whispered, utterly stunned by what I saw inside. The contents were far beyond anything I had expected, a true inheritance of great value. My mind raced as I considered what to do next. I need to tell Mom, I decided, quickly locking the safe and rushing to find her. After explaining everything to my mother, I called my husband for help, and together we carefully moved the safe from my parents' house. It wasn't long before it dawned on me that the items in the safe were undoubtedly Dad's, but if they were now part of my inheritance, including the shed, I might need to pay inheritance tax on them. This was something I had to look into thoroughly. The contents of the safe were undeniably valuable, so I decided to consult the lawyer. Should I be worried about inheritance tax for this? I asked him. The lawyer advised me, it's better to consult a certified public accountant about that. Following his advice, I reached out to a friend who referred me to an accountant. I handed over all the complicated matters to the accountant, letting them handle the details. Time passed, almost half a year, before things seemed to settle down. Just as I was beginning to feel at ease, my sister showed up unexpectedly near my home. What brings you here all of a sudden? I asked, surprised to see her. Well, I had some business at our parents' house, so I thought I'd stop by, she replied, her behavior seeming off. I couldn't help but find it strange. Even though my home was relatively close to our parents' house, it was still a 20-minute drive. We weren't the kind of sisters who visited each other casually, especially given the tension between us over our father's inheritance. Our relationship was too strained for her to drop by without a good reason. Suspicion gnawed at me as I studied her demeanor. Meanwhile, my sister, looking a bit nervous, asked, "Can I come in?" "Sure. But what's the matter?" I responded, still wary. "I have something to talk about," she said, forcing a smile. Reluctantly, I let her into the house, and after serving her some coffee, she started fidgeting before finally getting to the point. "So, did you win the lottery or something?" she asked suddenly. "What?" "No, I didn't," I replied, genuinely puzzled. "Then did your husband get a bonus?" She pressed further, causing me to tilt my head in confusion. I never bought lottery tickets because I wasn't interested, and although my husband, a salaried worker, did receive holiday bonuses, it wasn't that time of year. What on earth is she talking about? I wondered, so I asked her directly, "Hey, what are you talking about?" Suddenly, my sister's demeanor changed. She got angry and snapped. "What? Are you making fun of me?" "No. What are you talking about?" I asked again, trying to understand. "Money," she exclaimed. "You have it, don't you?" "Money," I repeated, still confused. "Yes, I heard about it," she said, now speaking more excitedly. She then launched into a story from a few days ago. Living in the city, she had run into our aunt by chance. The woman started the conversation by saying, "I know how hard it's been for you since you lost your father. Are you doing okay?" "Yes, well, I visited him many times when he was sick." "Thank you," my sister had responded. "But you must be relieved, right? Getting such a big thank you gift," our aunt had added. "Thank you gift?" Elsa had asked, clearly intrigued. "Yes, your sister sent me a $1,000 gift card as a thank you for visiting him," our aunt had revealed. "A gift card?" Elsa repeated, and it was clear that this detail had caught her attention. Hearing that I had sent such a gift, she became convinced that I had come into some extra money. Now, sitting in my living room, she interrogated me. "You got a windfall, didn't you? Just admit it." "Oh, so that's what this is about," I sighed, finally understanding her strange behavior. My sister didn't appreciate my reaction and yelled, "What's with that attitude? Are you mocking me?" "No, it was a thank you gift," I explained calmly. "So, where did you get the money for it?" "That's what I want to know," she demanded. "From the inheritance, remember?" I replied. "Inheritance? But all you got was that dirty shed," she said, clearly skeptical. "Yes, that's true," I admitted, "but there was a safe inside it. That's where the real inheritance was." "A safe? Real inheritance?" she repeated, her curiosity piqued. I carefully explained to her that the safe had contained valuable watches, which our father had collected as a hobby throughout his life. However, I didn't know their exact value at the time. The remaining savings Dad had left amounted to about $100,000, which seemed small considering he was a business owner who had retired early. That led me to think he might have invested much of his wealth in those watches. "If they're valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax," my mother had warned after seeing the contents of the safe. "What should I do, Mom?" I had asked, concerned. "Things like this always come out. You should declare it properly," she advised.
How?
I had asked, unsure of what steps to take. "Let's ask that lawyer we spoke to recently," she suggested. So, I consulted the lawyer again, and he explained that if you inherit valuables, the inheritance tax is determined by their value at the time of inheritance. He also advised me to get help from a certified public accountant, so I did. As a result, it was found that the watches alone were worth at least $500,000. With watches this valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax, the accountant had informed me. "How should I pay it?" I had asked. "How about keeping the ones you're emotionally attached to and selling the rest?" the accountant had suggested. That made sense. I didn't know much about the value of these watches, and I felt it was better for someone who understood their worth to have them. With that thought, I sold some of the watches and used the money from the sale to pay the inheritance tax. I also sent thank you gifts to the relatives who had helped us. Those thank you gifts were the gift cards my sister was talking about. By the way, what I kept were items like the pocket watch my father often wore, that I showed my sister the pocket watch as I recounted the story. This one isn't worth much, but it holds the most memories for me. Despite the sentimentality of my words, my sister frowned upon hearing the story. So, you don't have any of the valuable ones left? She asked, her tone laced with disappointment. No, there are still some in the safe, I replied. Where's the safe? She demanded. It's at Mom's place. The safe is too big for our house. It's the one Dad used at his company, I explained. My sister muttered, looking away, lost in thought. I felt a pang of unease seeing her like that, but before I could say anything, she abruptly stood up and announced, I'm leaving now that I know where the money came from. Without another word, she left. Knowing how money-driven my sister could be, I worried that she might try to claim some of the money from the watch sales. But to my relief, she walked out without making a scene. In my relief, however, I ignored the nagging unease that lingered in the back of my mind. My sister wasn't usually this understanding, and I should have remembered that. Later that night, I was reminded of my earlier concerns when I received a frantic call from my mother. Astrid, it's urgent. Come over right away. What happened, Mom? I asked, alarmed by the panic in her voice. It's bad, really bad, she replied, her words rushed and unclear. My husband and I immediately rushed to my mother's house. As we approached, we noticed something strange. The area around the house was bathed in red light. What's going on? I wondered. The reason became clear as we got closer. Several police cars were parked outside. Pushing through the crowd, I called out to my mother. What happened, Mom? Astrid, you see. She began, her voice trembling as she explained. According to my mother, it was after 9 p.m. when she, feeling tired, had already gone to bed. Shortly after, she heard strange noises coming from inside the house, like someone searching for something. It's a burglar, was her immediate thought. She was the only one home and felt helpless, so she decided to escape through the window. As she glanced back, she saw the beam of a flashlight moving inside the house, confirming her fear. She ran to the neighbor's house, frantically telling them, Help, there's a burglar. The neighbors quickly came out, and they, too, saw the flashlight's beam inside the house. They immediately called the police, believing there was a break-in. But it wasn't a burglar, it was my sister. She had sneaked into the house to rummage through the safe after hearing my story earlier. Neither my mother nor the neighbors had any way of knowing this. When the police arrived, my sister, realizing she was in deep trouble, panicked and tried to make a quick escape. It was her family home, so there was no real need to run, but in her panic, she thought she had to flee. As she rushed to get away, she bumped into the open door of the safe. The already unstable safe then toppled over, falling right on top of her as she tried to flee. So, Elsa got trapped under it? I asked, still trying to comprehend the situation. Yes, that's what happened, my mother confirmed. Is she okay? I asked, concerned despite everything. She was taken to the hospital by ambulance, but she keeps saying her leg hurts, my mother said. What on earth was she thinking?
I was truly dumbfounded.
Afterward, my mother and I apologized profusely to the police officers who had come to help, feeling bad for causing such a late-night disturbance. I also called my sister's husband to inform him of what had happened. Wait, you're saying Elsa broke into her own family home and got injured? He asked, incredulous. Yes, that's correct, I replied, feeling embarrassed on her behalf. What is Elsa doing? She doesn't even do housework, he muttered, clearly frustrated. I'm really sorry about my sister. That's it, I'm filing for divorce, he declared flatly. Divorce? I echoed, shocked. Yes, he confirmed. Apparently, she's racked up a considerable amount of debt. She's been spending a lot on brand name items, and I just found out about it. We had a huge fight, and she stormed out, saying she'd borrow from Mom and pay it back. I didn't think she'd go this far. It turned out that my sister had already used the $100,000 she inherited to pay off some of her debts. Still short on funds, she had come to me, hoping to scrounge up more money. Learning about the contents of the safe had driven her to this desperate act, which in turn led to the whole chaotic situation. No wonder her husband was furious. In the end, my sister, who had fractured her leg in the incident, was hospitalized. Her husband came to the hospital and, true to his word, brought divorce papers. Naturally, my sister made a scene, refusing to sign them. "I'm not getting a divorce." "Absolutely not," she screamed, but it was too late. Her husband was resolute, and seeing no other choice, she reluctantly signed the papers. Now, she lies in her hospital bed, stunned, with a part-time job magazine beside her. I guess she's planning to start working part-time to pay off her remaining debts. While this is a sad turn of events, it's also a relief for me. Maybe now she'll focus on getting her life back on track. As for me, I decided to move back into my parents' home after all the commotion. Of course, I'm concerned about my mother, but there's another reason. I recently found out that I'm pregnant. My husband and I talked it over and decided it would be best to move back home so that my mother could help us with the children and childcare. I wish I could have told my father about the pregnancy while he was alive, but I'm sure he would be happy for us. Now, I'm looking forward to the future and to giving birth to a healthy baby with my mother's support by my side.